As a vault company, we provide funeral services to all cultures, religions, nationalities, gender, and sizes. There are times when the average size casket isn't right for someone, and we produce oversized Wilbert Monticellos, Venetians, and other forms of an oversized burial vault. This particular vault is a 34-inch Wilbert Monticello, weighing in just shy of 3,000 pounds. The base level Wilbert Monticello is 30 inches on the interior and weighs around 2,600 pounds. We also produce a 24-inch Monticello, which weighs in around 1,400 pounds. So we do have the average size burial vault, but we also produce oversize, and we also have a line of loved and cherished vault and casket combinations for infants, as well as the 24-inch Wilbert Monticello for young children. And I think it goes without saying that those are the hardest days for a vaultman, especially one with children. But those are also services where we need to make sure that we cross all our I's and dot all our T's to make sure that everything on our end of this industry is handled with care and respect as well. Now, with this being a burial vault that is heavier than average, I need to make sure that I set up a stable platform to support the weight of the burial vault. As well as 4 inches wider on the interior, it's also 4 inches longer, which can cause a little bit of a problem for myself since I cut down my sideboards to be the exact length of the average Wilbert burial vault. And on top of that, this cemetery is incredibly sandy, so I need to be very careful to make sure the extra weight of the vault does not cave in the edges or the walls of the grave. For extra safety, I put 8-foot long boards underneath my 4x4 boards and use an extra aluminum over both sides to make sure there's extra support for the boom to go out over the grave. Now, I have used a Hilljoy for 34-inch Wilbert Monticellos before, but it does come in handy to have a Johnny handler from True Rebel Equipment to make sure I stay safe during this process. To place a burial vault over the grave using this piece of equipment, we first extend out the boom and then level out the boom to make sure that the vault doesn't begin sliding down the boom when it's lifted off the platform. Once our boom is secure, we can make sure that the harness is safely secured to the vault and remove the winch cable from underneath. One thing I'm very cautious of is not having any slack in this cable. When I raise the vault up and bring it over the platform and begin to lower it, the last thing I would want is for that slack to release and the vault to drop multiple inches at a time, bouncing on the platform and risking breaking any of my boards. Now, at my company, we don't actually produce a 34-inch Wilbert Monticello. We actually don't produce any oversized vaults or undersized vaults. So we pick these up from another company and prepare them for the service ourselves. The company that does produce these uses a sealer on the outside of the burial vault and uses masking tape on the liner itself while the vault is being poured, which can leave behind some residue, so I'll be sure to get that off later on. This Johnny handler has the option of cranking the vault out over the grave instead of using manual force to push it out, which definitely comes in handy on the hillsides, and when the vault wants to swing one way or another. I can simply move the vault out over the grave and then use that winch to adjust the length to make sure it's clearing both sets of 4x4s, and if I need to scoot it from side to side, I can adjust the boom itself, and when I raise it back up, the vault will naturally swing on the cable. Once I have the burial vault aligned exactly where I want it, I can release the tension, unhook the vault, and begin to move the buggy away from the grave. The easiest way to collapse the boom is to just simply drive the buggy forward, and then I can stand in between the boom and lift it up to set it back in its upright position where it will be safe for transport. I can then attach the winch back down to the base of the buggy to make sure that the winch doesn't move around as I'm driving. Now, the process of placing the vault over the grave is complete. The only thing left to do is get the buggy out of sight for the funeral service and begin the process of setting this burial vault the Wilbert Way. The Wilbert Way is a display method in which the burial vault is suspended above the grave, with the lid pushed back on rails away from the family. This process is also referred to as swinging the burial vault, because the base is suspended over the grave and can be swung in either direction. When setting a 34-inch Wilbert Monticello, we do have just a couple of extra steps to make sure that the vault is safe and to adjust for that little bit of extra width. Starting with the length of my boards, they're just a little bit short, so I need to place a block on each side of one end to make sure that the feet have a stable platform to sit on. The feet are our first piece of equipment to add, and for a 34-inch Monticello, we have extensions that simply pop on and off of each side of the feet. Without this, my feet wouldn't be wide enough to go around the vault and make sure the reels have room to get snug right up against the vault so that the carriers and the rails line up properly as well. We're now ready to place the feet on each end of the burial vault and begin to reel our cables. The cables that I use are more than strong enough to accommodate the little bit of extra weight with this burial vault, and the cables are reeled the exact same way as they would be on an everyday service. One thing I did slightly differently today is instead of doing 8 reels on each end of the vault, I did 7 on the high end and 9 on the low end, making sure that as I lower the burial vault, I don't run out of cable on the end that's sitting up around 2 feet from the ground level. Once the cables are reeled onto each end, I can attach the one-man bar, which makes this a one-person job. Without the one-man bar, you would have to go back and forth between each set of feet, lifting and cranking, to raise and lower the burial vault. By connecting the 2 sets of feet together, all the gearing works in conjunction with itself, and both ends raise and lower equally at the same rate of speed. When I set the burial vault onto the platform, I thought it was in the perfect spot, but in reality I needed to move it around 2 inches up towards the hillside. To adjust for this, I simply moved my feet back where I needed the vault to go, and pressed my feet flush up against the vault on the opposite end. And this is why it's called swinging the burial vault. If my vault were set up too far to one side, I could do the same thing by moving my feet to one side of the vault and my cables to the opposite side, and when tension is placed on the cables, the vault will swing to either direction that I need it to go, making sure that the vault fits properly into the grave. Our next step, now that we know the vault is in its proper place, we can add our lid carriers and our lid rails. The rails have a hook that grabs onto the feet, which is what supports the weight of the lid when it's pushed back away from the base. Once the carriers are opened up far enough, I can tighten down the carriers to the lid, making sure that it's snug and making sure I don't have any loose bolts. One thing that a vaultman needs to keep in mind is maintaining his equipment. For my safety, for the family's safety, and to make sure that the funeral service is able to go on as it should, without any malfunctions of the burial vault equipment. One thing I will look at is to make sure that my lid rails have a slight incline away from the family. Without this incline, when the weight of the lid is pushed to the ends of the rails will bend down ever so slightly, but it can appear as though the lid is leaning backwards, which to me looks unsafe. I wouldn't want anyone at the funeral to think that a 1,200 to 1,400 pound lid was leaning backwards and about to fall. That may prevent the family from seeing the nameplate on top of the vault lid or the emblem on top of the vault lid if they were afraid to be near it. But now that I know that my rails are correct, I can check to make sure the grave didn't cave in at all, and we can separate the lid from the base, simply by lowering the entire vault down until the wheels on the lid carriers catch the rails and the base separates from the lid. Now that we've double checked to make sure all 4 wheels are properly aligned, we can lower the base down to its display height, which is just below the reels. This display height gives room for the lowering device to have room for the pistols to swing freely as the casket is being lowered. And now that the base is separated from the lid, I can get back to cleaning on this Wilbert Monticello base. Sometimes as the concrete vaults sit in storage to cure, they can get dusty and just generally dirty inside of a shop, so we make sure we go over the liner with some Windex and a rag to make sure everything is clean and tidy before the family arrive. It's not always necessary on every single vault, but that's why we keep cleaning supplies to make sure that we can get that taken care of if need be. And it's now time to add the frigid Imperial lowering device. And this did give me some troubles today. It has been a while since I've set a 34-inch Monticello, and not only was I having trouble trying to get 6 clicks on the lowering device, but I also had trouble because I placed the entire lowering device on backwards when I first set it in place. That's a good rule of thumb for any vault man. If you have room to always have the family led in on the high side of a burial vault in order to make sure the family doesn't have to lift up very high to place the casket on the first roller. Now normally on a lowering device such as this, we open it up to 4 clicks for the casket to fit in between the rails. On a 34-inch Monticello, we can assume that the casket will be slightly larger, so I was able to open up the lowering device to 6 clicks to ensure the casket fits between the rails of the lowering device and enters the base of the vault with ease. The last step of the Wilbert Way process is to add our T-carpets, which cover up our equipment and our 4x4s on each end of the burial vault. Personally, I tend to keep my T-carpets folded up as much as possible. One thing I've done over the years is try to eliminate any trip hazard as much as I can, which includes cutting down my boards, leaving my T-carpets folded, and staking my carpets down. The final step in this process is to place the nameplate, emblem, and trademark on the burial vault. Now most cemeteries are aligned in an east to west fashion, with the head being to the west and the feet being to the east. In most situations, this is in accordance with religious tradition, facing the east, awaiting Christ's return. This has been the setup of the 34-inch Wilbert Monticello. Thank you for watching, take care, and God bless.